Welcome back 1/12 scale diorama builders. I'm back with another video. I'm going to show you guys today how to make 1/12 scale small crates for your action figure photography or your 1/12 scale dioramas. So let's just jump right into it. So here we are with our wooden block. It's a cheap ABC block that you can find at like the dollar store or on Amazon. Before we move on to the first step, I just want to make sure I note this, especially if you get a cheap block. You're going to see the wood grain on two of the sides. That's where it was cut from. We're not going to want to use those sides at our front facing part because when we start painting it in, it's going to soak up too much of the paint. It's not going to look right. And then when we go in to make our cuts too, the grain's going to interfere with our Dremel. So as you could kind of see right here, I already drew some guidelines just to help me draw on the lines a little bit better since I am using a new camera setup. I don't want to try to block the camera too much. So we're going to go ahead and grab our ruler. And we're going to measure from the line, and we're going to bring and mark down about 7 millimeters from the top, and then we're going to flip it around and do the same thing, 7 millimeters. And then we're going to draw our guidelines as straight as possible. There you go. And then we're going to draw a center line. So you would measure between these two lines that you drew and then find the center. Like I said, I already drew a guideline for me, so I'm not going to really show that too much. Just explain it to you guys, and I'll draw my line. So now you have the 3 lines. I already did it on all 3 sides. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my Dremel, and we're going to Dremel out these lines. But we're going to leave about 1 millimeter to the edge of the line. And I'll explain that in a little bit later in the next steps, why we're going to do that. So you're just going to want to Dremel out the middle of those lines. And like I said, I'm going to do this off camera because the Dremel's too loud. So we'll be right back. So here we are. I grabbed another block. I'm Dremeling out a big batch of these. I'm going to paint up a lot of these. So I just grabbed one of them from the pile. I don't remember which one I drew on in the beginning of the video. But as you can see, we Dremeled out the lines. You could do it clean. I did it like a little bit jagged. I did it at like a lower speed. If you speed up your Dremel, you can get a cleaner line, but I kind of want that jagged edge because that's going to give us the detailing in the planking detail in the crate. So, and like I mentioned in my last clip, you're going to want to leave like 1 millimeter on each side of these lines, because when we start gluing down the facing that we're going to make on here, when you glue it down, it's going to press into that indent, and you're going to see that indent behind the front facing. It's not going to make the crate look very good. So we're going to go ahead and start drawing out with our cardstock the front facing for all these sides. Alright, so we have our cardstock in front of us now. You're going to go ahead and grab your block. Like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this, these blocks are a little bit over 1 inch in diameter. It's kind of like a weird size, but yeah, they're over 1 inch in diameter. So we're going to go ahead, you can use your ruler for this. I'm just doing this a little bit easier. As you can see, I already marked my paper with some guidelines so I could draw it easier on camera, like I said before. But you could just use your ruler, but I'm going to go ahead and put the block down. And as you can see, I marked it on one corner and then the other corner. This way I could get the dimensions of my block. So now I'm going to grab my long ruler and try here. Let me grab a different one that lays more flat. So we're going to go ahead and line up our 2 guidelines. Sorry if this is not in focus or in frame. Like I said, I'm trying a new camera angle. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line across. Not the best line, but it'll do. I'll grab my smaller ruler. This way it's easier on the camera. And I'm going to go ahead and draw my lines to make the squares. So I have these guidelines. Try to draw them as straight as possible. And like I said, we're going to need 5 of these squares out of cardstock for each crate that you're going to make. So I'm going to go ahead and make, I think I'm doing 6 right now, but I'm going to fill out this page later on off camera because like I said, I'm making more than one. And basically this is going to be our front facing. So with the finished crate, see how it has this bordered? That's where we're making right now. So we're going to have 4 on each side, and then we're going to have 1 on top. That's why I said you're going to need 5. So now that that's done, we're going to measure 5 millimeters from each side. So from the top line, you're going to measure 5 millimeters down, and then from the bottom line, you're going to measure 5 millimeters up, and then from the left and right side, you're going to measure 5 millimeters out this way, and that's going to create the border for the front facing of these crates. So it's going to make this small border around. So like I said, I'm just measuring from the line, marking 5 millimeters. I'm going to do it the same way this way, lining it up, marking 5 millimeters. And then I could line up my lines, trying to do that as straight as possible. Go ahead and mark it. And mark this one. Measure out the other sides. It's not the straightest lines, but it'll do for the camera. So measure 5 millimeters out. This one too. Draw my line. And then, perfect. And draw my line. So we're gonna go ahead and do that for all 5 squares. And we're gonna cut out the entire square, and then we're gonna cut out the square in the middle. So let me see if I could just demonstrate cutting out the square in the middle so you guys could have a visual of what I'm actually saying. So I'm just gonna cut out, try to follow the lines as best as possible. And there's another one. Not my best work, but for the angle I'm sitting at and filming, I gave myself a solid B. So we're gonna cut out that square. Don't throw away the square. That's gonna be part of the next step. So keep that square on the side. Keep all the squares that you cut out from your framing. And I'm gonna go ahead and just cut this out roughly, really quick. Of course, you could use a ruler. I'm just doing this by hand so you guys could have a visual of how to do it. I have like a paper cutter that would cut paper in straight lines. So there's that little square. Let me move this cardstock because it's kind of like blowing out the color in the video. So just for an example, that's going to go on to there. That's why I said the first 2 guidelines that we drew to make them about 7 millimeters. This way they show up in the square. If you do them 5 or under, the front facing parts that we're going to glue on here are going to cover those lines. So you got to really, really try to get that pretty accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and put this to the side, and I'll show you what we're going to do with the little squares too. Okay, so be right back. So now I have my 5 pieces already cut out. I already separated the internals from the border, as you can see. And so the next step is we'll be separating the 2 pieces from each other. I'm going to set one aside because, like I said, we don't really need to mess with that one too much. And you kind of want to keep the squares matched up to the parts that you cut, because if you don't cut them perfectly, it's hard to fit the pieces back inside that we're going to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and just line them up so I don't get confused on which square belongs to which cutout. So the next step would be to draw 2 lines. Let's see if I could get that to show up. There we go. So we're drawing the 2 lines straight across like that in a diagonal. And then we're gonna cut off the excess, and that's gonna simulate the cross beam right here on the crate. And that's the one reason I was saying try to match up the squares, because if you free-handed them, the squares are not gonna be exactly the same on each cutout. So as soon as you cut this out and say you use the wrong square, it won't fit in there perfectly, which you want a pretty perfect fit for each of these. So I'm gonna go ahead and just use my ruler just to show you guys, demonstrate it, so you guys have a visual like I said before. Just roughly make the lines. That one came out a little weird, but I'll fix that one after. Same thing with this one. Just trying to get the pointy parts in there, because like I said, that's going to be the cross beam. That one's better. Okay, so I'll do these off camera. You don't need to see me drawing on all of them. And like I said, you could just grab a pair of scissors or use your X-Acto blade. So I use a pair of scissors. And if you do make the lines too wide, you could always trim a little bit off as you go. If you look at it and you're like, okay, that looks too big. And just to test, this one belongs to this one, so I could just plop it in there and the corners should line up. Let's see. See if I'm still in frame. And there we go. See, as you can see, they line up pretty well. Let me just tap that in there. So that's what you want. You want a pretty snug fit. So we're going to come back to the next step. All right, so we're nearly there. We're actually going to start assembling these crates, and then the final step should be the paint job. So if you've been following along all the steps, you should have four of these that have the center beams across, cut out, and then just one blank one. Like I said, this one's going to go on top, just like the finished crates I showed you guys. That's the top part, and these are the sides. So we're going to go ahead and start applying the front facings and the top to this. So you could use super glue or PVA glue. I like to use wood glue, Elmer's wood glue. I just find it holds better. I mean, trees are wood and the blocks are made out of wood, and so is paper, so I just thought it'd work better, so I like it. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna grab a paintbrush, and if you do use a paintbrush, make sure you wash it out after you're done or before it starts getting hard, because you don't want to ruin your paintbrush. So I'm gonna go ahead and start applying a thin layer. You don't want to go too much on it, that's why I like to use a paintbrush. Just grabbing more glue. And like I said, you don't want to apply too much, because if you apply too much, it's going to squeeze out the edges. And if you don't clean it up, you could see when you start painting over it, you're going to see where the wood glue starts seeping through. You can see the color difference when you start painting over it. You can sand it away, but on something small as this, it's kind of hard. So we're just going to go ahead and line it up and put it on there. If you do put too much and you start getting some seepage, you just want to try to clean it off as best as possible with your hand or with a damp cloth. We're going to go ahead and start applying the crossbeam. I'll do the one front face and then the top, and then off camera I'll put on the rest, because it's all the same, pretty much the same process. And this way we could just start getting to painting. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply a little bit of glue on the crossbeam. Like I said, the thinner the better. And if honestly with the wood glue, if you put a thin enough bead of glue on there or brush on a thin enough layer, it actually dries pretty fast, so you get to start painting relatively quick after you're done gluing all these, especially if you're making a big batch like I am. Start putting it into place, and as you can see, our crate's starting to form. And it's really up to you. You could go going this way, you could glue them any which way direction you want, honestly. So I'm going to press that, make sure it's nice and sealed. And again, like I said, when we're dremeling out those lines, not to go all the way through, because if you start pressing on the front facing that we're putting on here, it's going to start going into that indent, and it's not going to look very great. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this one. This is the top. So I'm going to go ahead and start applying some wood glue on that. And this gives me a little bit of time to talk while I'm gluing this on here. Again, I haven't made a video in about 3 years. I was thinking about doing an update video, just talking about why I was gone for so long. But it's a lot of things that happened in my life, so I took a break. So I'm back. I'm going to be making more videos. I have a good number of things written down. I usually keep like a notebook of all my ideas and start making things. Like with these crates, this wasn't the first like go ahead. I've tried different ways of making these, but this is the way I like better, so I wrote it down in my book. And I've been making like step by step, like kind of written instructions, so I don't forget my projects, so I could come back to them. So I didn't line this one up very well. As you can see, there's a little gap, but paint will cover that up. And I put a thin enough layer, it's pretty much almost dry, so I'll just leave it like that for right now. But you want to be careful and make sure you line it up really good. I might just peel this off and try again. No, it's stuck on there pretty good. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to paint, I'm going to go ahead and glue the rest of these sides on off camera, and then we're going to start painting these up. Okay, so here we go. It's all glued up. We're gonna go through these next steps pretty quick. We're just painting it up, and it's a basic paint job. I can do a later video where I get more in depth with weathering and everything, but for right now we'll just do the basic paint job like the ones I showed you. We're gonna go ahead and black base in black the whole thing. You want to get in every nook and cranny. That's going to give you the shadows, that grittiness. So I'm going to go ahead and base this in black, and then we'll be right back with the next color. So here it is, black base. It's still a little wet, but it's okay. It's mostly dried. I'm just trying to get through the painting process pretty quick this time around. So now that you have your black base, sometimes you're going to need to do 1 or 2 coats depending on the blocks that you get. The ones I got, the pigment for the lettering is really strong, so I had to do about 2 coats. That's why I'm just going and moving forward, because it's taking forever to dry. But it's mostly dry, so we're going to go ahead and go in with the dark brown, and we're going to dry brush about 80% of it. We're going to leave the nooks and crannies black, and we're just going to dry brush with this dark brown. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that. You're going to want to go over it very lightly. You don't want to put too much pressure, or you're going to get big streaks that are not going to look good. I'll do the front face first, and then paint the whole thing, and then come back. Like I said, I'm just demonstrating it for you guys on camera as best I can, so you guys have a visual representation of my instructions. So again, with another pass with this brown, and you're gonna want to layer it. You don't want to go too fast, just take your time. It's gonna look more realistic if you take your time, try to get all the edges. We're gonna just keep adding layers of this dry brushing of the brown. There we go. And dry brushing, we're just trying to pop out all that detail that we put in, the border, the engraved lines that we carved in with our Dremel. I'm going to keep adding until I think it's nice and coated. Like I said, about 80% coverage with this dry brush, because we're going to still go back with another color. And try not to get in all those crevices that we cut out. That's going to be the really showing detail for this crate. Like I said, I'm using a new layout, so the color might be blown out. I'll keep working on it. I have new lights and a new camera. As I'm dry brushing this, I have another opportunity to talk directly to you guys. I know I have gotten a decent amount of subscribers since I've left, so thank you for subscribing if you're watching this video now. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll be coming out with new videos and tutorials. A lot of things have changed. I know COPA was the thing that hit the action figure community pretty hard. I had to go through the review process as well, and I barely got my monetization back. So that's a big factor of coming back too, just because this hobby of mine is, you know, self-funded through my channel and through my Instagram. I do make these props for figure photography, and I make some extra ones as I'm doing these videos, and I sell them on my Instagram. So I'm gonna leave a link down to my Instagram so you guys can follow me over there. Sometimes I give tips over there too. I haven't been active for 3 years like with this channel, so I'm gonna be active again over there. And I just want to thank everybody that messaged me while I was gone. You guys know who you are. Thank you for your kind words and, you know, your concerns and all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry I didn't message back. I'll get back to you guys pretty soon since I'm getting back in the swing of this hobby. This is looking pretty nice. I don't know if the camera could pick up that color. I'm gonna do like one more pass, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. Yeah, I don't know what else to add, just as banter for you guys, but I really do enjoy this hobby. I've noticed a lot of new people in the community for 112 scale dioramas and figure photography, so I'm really happy. If you guys know anybody new in the community, if you're watching this, you know, drop a comment of their channel, their Instagram, let me know. I'm interested in what people are doing now versus, you know, the last 3 years. So this is where I want it. So we're gonna go ahead and finish off all these sides, and then we'll come back and do the final color for this. All right, we got that base coat of that brown done. Like I said, 80% coverage. Now comes the final coat of paint. We're gonna go ahead and do a very light dry brush. I would say about like 20 to 30% coverage. You're just trying to very highlight the edges of this. So go very light, make sure your brush is really dry with the paint. We're using, I believe it's a golden brown. I'll throw up all the paints as I'm painting on the screen too for you guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and just, like I said, we're lightly dusting the edges of this to give it like that worn wood kind of look with this light brown. It really adds a little bit of extra. Like I said, this is just a basic paint job that we're doing on here. Get another go at it. Let's do the top. You can really kind of see it transform the top pretty good. Again, I just want to say thanks to everybody that's been, you know, dropping me messages the past like 3 years, wondering where I'm at, making sure I'm doing all right. I also want to thank everybody that's been like sharing my videos since I've been gone. That's kept my channel alive. Thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. Yeah. So as you can see, there's the side that we did with the light dry brush, and then here's the regular side. I really like how that golden brown adds that dimensionality to it. So I'm going to go ahead and dry brush all this, and then we'll come back for the final step. So here we are, the paint job's nice and done. The last thing that we need to do is actually seal this to make sure it doesn't rub on any of our dioramas or our tables when we're taking figure photography or setting these up in our detofs. I'm actually going to use this matte sealer. I'll try to leave a link for it in my description. The other crates that I did before when I was making these to test it out, I did a semi-gloss, which I really do like how this came out. It brings out the darker brown. It makes, I don't know, when it dries it makes it look darker. But I do want to start using the matte sealer just because when you do figurative photography, if you have any type of glare, it could take away from your photo. So I'm going to, for the most part, I'm going to start sealing most of my props with the matte sealer instead of the semi-gloss. It's up to you. Like I said, you'll get this lighter color, looks more worn with the matte finish, and then with the semi-gloss, you'll get like a semi-gloss prop. But like I said, that shine might mess up your figure photography. So I'm gonna go ahead and seal it with that, and then we'll come back and look at this, and we'll do the outro. So we'll see you guys in a second. All right, here it is, nice and sealed. It still has a little bit of gloss, even though it's a matte finish, but I'm okay with that. I do have about like 2 or 3 more tutorials of different boxes that are different crates that I have. If you guys want to see that up next, I'll film those. Other than that, I have some other projects I want to do. I am working on a diorama right now that I'm really excited to build and hopefully have a couple tutorials for it up, because I'm really excited for that one. Usually at the end of my videos, I'll do a couple of figure photography with the prop in it, but with the whole Copa thing, I don't want to risk it. So if you guys want to see those pictures, I will put them on Instagram, maybe on the next day, the day that follows this video, or maybe on the same day. So go ahead and make sure you follow me over there so you guys can see those photos. And like I said too, I do sell the extra ones that I make. I'm making a big batch of these. And it just helps me fund the channel, upgrade my equipment, and all that kind of stuff. As always, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to like and hit that sexy subscribe button. So I'm just marking 5 millimeters. So I'm just marking 5 millimeters. Fuck.